Michael Moss, Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us. Dive into the world of processed foods and discover the irresistible trio of salt, sugar, and fat that hooks us on these products. In this summary of A Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us by Michael Moss, you'll learn how the food giants exploited the shift in American society post-World War II, weaving their way into our meals with processed convenience foods designed for our time-strapped lives. We will explore how our evolutionary cravings for sweetness and calorie-dense fats have fueled the industry, as well as the many health risks associated with excessive sugar, fat, and salt consumption. Finally, we'll examine the ways in which various countries have attempted to regulate and educate their people on healthier eating habits, to combat these hidden dangers lurking in our food.
The rise of convenience foods in America. In the post-World War II era, women in America began working outside the home, leaving little time for cooking. Television also became popular, making it harder to spend time in the kitchen. Food companies took advantage of this shift and started producing processed convenience foods like Jell-O instant pudding. These items were designed to be quick and easy to prepare, and consumers were willing to pay for more free time. Home economics teachers still advocated for home-cooked meals, so food companies recruited their own teachers to promote processed foods through cooking contests and lessons. The fictional character Betty Crocker became the face of this movement, and her influence helped shift American food ideals toward factory-processed foods. This shift had a significant impact on American diets, as processed foods contain high amounts of salt, sugar, and fat. Our sweet tooth. Our love for sugar is rooted in our evolutionary biology, as it provides quick concentrated calories for survival. However, the excessive use of sugar in processed foods is intentional and designed to maximize our enjoyment by identifying the bliss point of sweetness. Although our individual bliss points vary with age, processed food companies still cram sugar into their products. Americans consume an average of 22 teaspoons of sugar per day, with over two-thirds of it coming from processed foods. Even seemingly healthy foods like pasta sauce contain surprisingly high amounts of sugar. The American Heart Association recommends adults to consume no more than 5 to 9 teaspoons of sugar per day on top of their nutritional needs. The bittersweet relationship with sugar. In the 1970s, the correlation between high consumption of sugar and negative health outcomes prompted health professionals to propose a ban on sugary food advertisements aimed towards children. However, after much public debate, the proposal failed. Instead, the processed food industry changed its marketing strategy to better cater to the public mood. Despite Americans' awareness of the health risks associated with sugar, the demand for high-sugar foods continued to soar, resulting in significant social costs and negative health outcomes. The deceptive nature of fat in processed foods. Fat is the second favorite ingredient in the processed food industry after sugar. Unlike sugar, we never seem to get enough of it, leading companies to stuff their products with loads of it, which we crave because of evolution that sculpted us to prefer it. Fat has double the calories of sugar, and we can't get enough of it because there is no bliss point. Interestingly, our taste buds can't gauge fat, so we sense its texture instead. Adding sugar to food may also make us perceive a reduction in fat content. Therefore, processed food companies use fat to enhance texture, appearance, and increase their products' shelf lives. They take advantage of our desire for fat, which makes us exceed our daily fat intake by 50%. This partly explains why over half of all Americans are overweight. Moreover, saturated fat, in particular, is linked to heart disease and type 2 diabetes. The cheesy truth. Cheese, particularly processed cheese, is a major source of fat in American diets, with Americans consuming 33 pounds of it and pseudo-cheese products per year. The U.S. government subsidized the dairy industry in the 1930s and began buying excess milk fat, which led to an abundance of cheese in the 1980s. Despite being identified as the biggest source of saturated fat in the average American diet, cheese and red meat consumption has not been recommended to be reduced by the USDA, leading some to speculate that the USDA is protecting the dairy and meat industries rather than Americans' health. The devastating effects of salt. Salt is a common ingredient in processed foods that can lead to hypertension. In the 1980s, 1 in 4 Americans suffered from hypertension, with high salt intake being identified as a contributor. Health officials initially instructed Americans to reduce their salt intake, but processed foods were discovered to be the real culprit. Food companies add salt for taste, to cover unpleasant flavors and increase shelf life. However, excessive sodium intake from processed foods can have devastating effects on health. Fighting against the unhealthy trifecta. The excessive consumption of salt, sugar, and fat has profound health implications. Governments in certain countries have taken measures to combat this issue. For example, Great Britain implemented a voluntary program that saved thousands of stroke and heart disease-related deaths a year. Similarly, Finland mandated sodium-heavy grocery items to be labeled as high salt content and launched public health campaigns to educate people, leading to a considerable reduction of deaths from strokes and heart disease. Conversely, the United States opposes government restrictions on the market, and some food companies have voluntarily reduced salt, sugar, and fat in their products, but results have been disappointing as consumers still prefer the unhealthy options. A change towards healthier eating habits must start with consumers.
In conclusion, salt, sugar, fat shines a light on the science and marketing strategies of the processed food industry that has leveraged our innate cravings for salt, sugar, and fat to create an unhealthy addiction. The book uncovers the immense power of these three ingredients and the impact they've had on our diets, leading to the alarming rise in obesity and related health issues. While attempts at regulation and self-imposed limitations by food companies have been made to varying success, the responsibility ultimately lies with consumers to shift our preferences towards healthier choices. Knowledge is power, and by understanding the strategies employed by food giants, we can begin to make more conscious decisions about the foods we consume.